Discover the joy waiting at Taylorville Estates Assisted Living. Click their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
WTIM. You're listening to the WTIM Morning Show on your information station. The show is sponsored by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first. I'm your host, Reed Kamai, and it's a little bit of a ways away, but it may help to know for planning that September 22nd is American Business Women's Day. And here to talk about that day and much more related to it is Valerie Belusko, a community and economic development educator at the University of Illinois Extension. Valerie, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Reed. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Getting through this kind of gloomy day, one step at a time. And I appreciate you asking. How about yourself?
Doing well.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're gonna be doing even better when we talk about American Business Women's Day, and there certainly is a lot of history with respect to the day and women in the workforce in America, and wasn't really that long ago that women weren't really very much in the workforce, didn't have much legal support to get into work, to start a business, of which there are certainly now many. I'm curious if there are any numbers that kind of illustrate that sort of trend.
So yes, and you're right. In the very beginning, you stated that September 22 is American Business Women's Day. So it is coming up. We have a little time to plan for some special events in our own community to celebrate our own American business women. But I think a lot of kids, or when I say kids, I guess even people my age, I'm in my 40s, really don't realize how far women have come and what it was like 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 30 years ago for women in business. So statistics are a great way to kind of look up and understand how far women have come in business and how things have changed. And so just to give you a little bit of an idea, in 1920, there were roughly 8.2 million women workers. And when I say that, I'm talking about employed and recognized workers, not just women who worked on their family farms, not women who kind of had their own personal sewing businesses out of their house, but workers that were truly recognized and thought to be counted and included as part of the workforce. Back then, they said only 8.2 million. And we know that number was a lot higher, but how they counted it and why they counted it that way was important, because the average American woman worker at that time was single. She was younger. And when they were counting those statistics, they were looking at jobs women had as factory workers, maybe private household workers, farm workers not on your own family farm, stenographers, typists, secretaries, teachers, those kind of things. And so things were much different back then. And also in America during the 1920s, approximately only 330,000 women were enrolled in college, and only about 18,000 of those actually graduated with degrees. So if you think about that from 1920, mid-1920s, that was 100 years ago. So then jump forward to the 1960s. There were more women in the workforce, definitely, roughly 22 million. So that's a pretty big jump from the 8.2 million. And the average woman worker was older and married. The occupations were pretty much the same, but we did start to add in things like saleswomen, teachers, waitresses, cooks, a little bit more heavily. There were definitely more women going to college and graduating from college. In fact, almost 9 times more than in 1920. So that was wonderful. But we still had a lot of growth. And so then in the 2000s, that's when we really started to see a big difference. And it stayed pretty steady since then. So between the 2000s and now, we have roughly 8.4 million women in the workforce. And I can't even begin to tell you what their industries are, because they're so varied. But we definitely do still see women most of the women in what we would consider female dominated I just lost my
female dominated roles, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you for helping me get on.
No worries.
Go
on. Yeah.
But we still see them as like teachers, nurses, healthcare workers, those kind of things. But we're climbing up the ladder and we're doing many more things. And a lot of that has been because of our education. So in the mid 2000s, women earned roughly 62% of all associate's degrees, 57% of all bachelor's, and 60% of all master's degrees. Jumped even more in the 2020s. So now we're at 65% of all associate's degrees, 60% of all bachelor degrees, 63% of all master's degrees. So we are making great headway, and that really starts to show in our local economies, but also our national economy, what we do and how we support things. It's incredibly important to have women fully engaged in the workforce.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned at the end right there that economic impact, because it goes well beyond the numbers that you mentioned. So very interesting stuff there indeed, and I'm glad you shared those numbers. I like numbers, so I was a fan of listening to all of that. So and in that sort of chronology that you mentioned, we have the world wars, and especially World War II. I know that was a big it certainly had an effect on jobs, and it sounds like women in those jobs had an effect too. Does that sound about right?
It really does. Most of the time when kids are reading their textbooks, or I guess they don't really have textbooks now, they're kind of reading it online. But when they hear about World War II and women entering the workforce, they picture Rosie the Riveter, and they kind of get the sense that women, that is kind of when women really entered the workforce. Well, I like to tell them yes, to an extent. What World War II really did, though, that was incredibly important, is that it opened different workforce doors. So jobs that were traditionally considered male jobs were now open and highly needed in order for our country to keep moving forward economically and in order to support the war efforts. So many jobs that would have strictly been considered male jobs were open to women. And that really helps just kind of expand the minds of the country. So we started to think about things a little different. Now, as soon as the men came back home, many of those women lost their jobs that they were doing in those male-dominated industries. But the important part is it created massive change, because there were more married women and older women who either kept working and found other jobs or wanted to continue to work in the future. And this really helped lay important groundwork for future equal right movements for women.
All right. And you mentioned Rosie the Riveter. Is she the one with the bandana who flexes her muscle?
She is.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No, I've seen the image, heard the name, didn't know that one was associated with the other. So let's see. Yeah, you mentioned some of the kind of effects of that. Let's take a break. I want to get a little more into those details on the other side of this break, and what legislation, if any, there was in those terms. We are talking about American Business Women's Day, which is going to be celebrated on September 22nd. It's a little ways out, but now you know about it to prepare. And we're talking with Valerie Belusko, Community and Economic Development Educator at the University of Illinois Extension. We'll talk more after this break here on the WTIM Morning Show on your information station.
Your information station, WTIM.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Corn and beans steady. Chicago wheat trading lower at this hour. September corn down 3/4, 4.36. December corn down a penny, 4.59. And March corn down a penny, 4.74 3/4. August beans up 1/4, 11.51 3/4. September beans 11.54 3/4, down 1 3/4. November beans 11.73 down 1 1/4. September Chicago wheat is down 6.36 1/4. September KC wheat down 704 1/2. September bean meal 310.60 up 40 cents. September bean oil 67.74 up 2 cents. Livestock trade August, feeders down to $1.32, $3.52 even. August live cattle down 55 cents, $2.33.62. August lean hogs 97.10, up half a dollar. Energy market, October Brent crude oil up $1.40, 80.85. RFD Radio Network.
Does your bank offer rewards on qualified signature-based debit card purchases? If not, then we need to talk. Hi, my name is Julie Sanchez with People's Bank and Trust. Join the growing number of our customers who are earning cash back on all qualifying debit card purchases. You already use your debit card. Now make it work for you with Save by Spending rewards from People's Bank and Trust. Earning rewards is as easy as shop, sign, and save. Call 888-PBT-1954 and find out more about our Save by Spending rewards program today. People's Bank and Trust, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Don't let summer weather get in the way of your summer fun. Here's Dr. Pavi Gill with Springfield Clinic, Taylorville.
Once the weather warms up, it's more important than ever to practice sun safety. The providers at Springfield Clinic, Taylorville recommend that if you're out in the sun, you drink water throughout the day and wear sunscreen, hats, and UPF clothing.
But if you need care, whether for a routine checkup or a vacation bug this summer, call Springfield Clinic Taylorville at 217-287-8855 to schedule an appointment.
Orthopedics is what we do. We fix broken bones, repair and replace joints, help people improve mobility and relieve pain. Getting back to your everyday activities is all you really want. Sarah Bush Lincoln has some of the most highly skilled orthopedic and hand surgeons in the country, and they want to help you get back to the things you love. Learn more at sarahbush.org. Sarah Bush Lincoln, trusted, compassionate care.
CTI is the only internet company that offers no data caps and limitless data for limitless possibilities. They're your local internet provider. Sign up by clicking their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Looking for the best deal? Head to Landmark of Taylorville. Get employee pricing plus on select new Chevy, Buick, and GMC models. Shop new and pre-owned today at Landmark or click our banner at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
You always do better at Landmark. WTIM.
We're back on the WTIM morning show on your information station. The show is sponsored by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first. I'm your host, Reed Kamai, and I continue my discussion with Valerie Belusko, Community and Economic Development Educator at the University of Illinois Extension, and we've been talking about American Business Women's Day. Yeah, that's the name, American Business Women's Day, being celebrated on September 22nd. So we finished that last segment talking about, the effect World War II had on women in employment and, how that kind of laid the groundwork for some laws that certainly were, played their role as well. That's what I was trying to say there in women becoming more integrated into the workforce. What were some of those pieces of legislation that led to that?
Well, I'm going to go over that in just a minute, but I want to go over some legislation that happened before World War II that was also important. And I think that the reason that I'm sharing this is just because there are so many people who are probably my age, in their 40s and younger. They don't really understand the history of everything that happened. Right now, we live in a fairly equal world as far as when it comes to women and men in the workplace and in finance, but it wasn't always that way. And so understanding the history of this is really important just to see how far we've come in such a short time. So something that's really interesting that I always like to shed light on is by the 1900s, every state in America had passed some sort of legislation that was modeled after a law in New York, which came about in 1848, which was called the New York Married Women's Property Act. And that actually granted married women some control over their property and earnings. And I found that very interesting when I was younger, because I thought, what do you mean? Women don't have complete control over their property and earnings? And no, that was not always the case. And, by the 1900s, well, they had some control over their property and earnings. So that's definitely something that I try to talk about with youth to get them to understand what it was like and how far we've come. In the 1920s, the Women's Bureau of the U.S. Department of Labor was created. And it's really neat, if you look that up online, to see some of the old reports, to see some of the words they used and statistics that they thought were interesting in highlighting and taking. But what was really interesting with that group is they actually helped formulate some standards and policies to promote welfare for wage-earning women, to really improve their working conditions, including that of African-American women workers, which was just radical at that time. And again, it's hard to believe that, just 100 years ago, we were thinking something like that was so radical, and now we're going, no, this is basic human decency. But it is interesting that we had to have that legislation, and that actually helped move into legislation in 1932 for the National Recovery Act, because we really started seeing a lot of women lose their jobs and because of that act. It forbid more than one family member from holding a government job. So very interesting, but we continued to move forward, and we had things like the Fair Labor Standards Act and the Fair Labor Standard Act, which was kind of establishing minimum wage in 1938. But that led to the big things after World War II. That led to things like the 1963 Equal Pay Act. That led to the 1964 Civil Rights Act that made it illegal for employers to discriminate against workers in their jobs on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And so all of this really stemmed from what happened and what roles that were taken by women during World War II. And they just kind of built upon it. And so it was nice to see that there was momentum for positive change that has only continued to increase.
Yeah,
so,
and then were you going to say more?
Oh, so that's why it's so important to think about this kind of early, even though we're still in August and it's more than a month away. But it's so important to think about that because we have come such a long way in 100 years. And we can really see locally the benefits of women, not only in the workforce, but of women in the business world. And so another interesting thing is, you might not have known this, you're a bit younger than me, but did you know in 1970 a woman could be turned down for a loan simply because of her sex?
I did not know that.
So lenders frequently required a male cosigner, and usually they wanted a husband, father, or brother. So if she didn't have that, it was very rare that a woman would get a loan. So then came along the 1974 Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which you would think would mean women were eligible for loans. However, it really wasn't a law that granted access women to credit. It just formalized the woman's ability to sue for discrimination if they weren't. So there were still lots of hurdles for women, even in the 1970s. So we've definitely come a long way, and it's definitely something to think about now so we can start celebrating it come September.
Yeah, a lot to think about, a lot to look back at, in terms of the legislation, in terms of the numbers, history, all of that. We're coming in on 1 minute left, so about a month and a half away from American Business Women's Day. How can folks celebrate it and recognize it?
So if you have any kind of social media, go ahead and shout out, what women contribute to your business. If you're a female business owner, this is your time to celebrate it. Decorate your windows, share your success stories, and always boost up other female business owners. So now is the time to really educate the youth in our communities and show them how far we've come and show them why it is good to constantly push for equitable change and why, change does happen slowly sometimes. It feels like it in the present, but really it also happens very quickly. And so don't give up on it. Always, make things positive and look at things in a positive light. Do your best and highlight each other's success stories.
There it is. Valerie Belusko, Community and Economic Development Educator at the Uni of Illinois Extension. Valerie, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. Have a great day.
The Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville.
96.1 FM Taylorville.
107.5 FM